Hi Luke, Amy here. Sorry for the delay, but I did want to get you some feedback on your draft because you're on the right track. There's a few things you need to polish up to be successful, but I do think you can be successful. So I want to touch on the things that I think you need to work on, but I do think the paper has potential. Good job with your formatting here. Don't forget to add your running header in the top right corner with the page number, excuse me, it's over here, and your last name. So just type in your last name there. And then when you are introducing the issue here, this goes on a little bit long in the introduction, and at the very least, this background information needs to be cited. Now, you can use author tags if you want, but because you're writing a blog, it would actually also be conventional just to go ahead and link to this information. So if you want to highlight and then embed links in the text there to show where you got the information, that would be a conventional way to cite for the blogging genre. And especially down here, these words, that doesn't really seem like your point of view. This sentence here seems like it's come from someone else. And if it is word for word from someone else, it needs to be in quotes, but at the very least, it needs to be cited. And again, you can link to it by doing that. You do introduce one particular video here, so that's great. However, you need to focus on this video throughout your discussion and not on all of the ads in the campaign as a whole. I mentioned this in my video about the discussions earlier in the week. So I'm going to kind of keep bringing that up as I talk about ways that you can focus on this particular ad throughout the rest of your analysis. Okay, so we're going into the first main point here, and you have a pretty good topic sentence, but again, instead of talking about every single ad produced by BP or the BP campaign, I think you're trying to say, instead just focus on this ad. So you're going to pull out the examples, like here you're talking about most of the images in the videos show these things. Just pull out the things that actually are shown in this particular ad and talk about those. And then also, I've noticed that you're not really using the rhetorical appeals language from the text and from the course materials for this unit, things like logos, pathos, and ethos. And you do want to touch on those terms just to push your discussion further into true analysis. So here where you're talking about appealing to the viewers, that is really a great start and you're definitely on the right track, but you've got to use the word emotion or pathos or something like that to prove to me that you really understand that type of appeal fully. So something like chosen to be appealing to the viewer's emotions, or chosen to appeal to the viewers pathologically, or something like that. And then again, these are great examples, but they need to relate directly to this ad. So I'm not sure that every single one of these things is particularly from that ad. And then also in this section, you're talking about similarities in all the videos. And remember that your goal here isn't to compare and contrast multiple videos. It's really just to focus on the rhetorical appeals that are being achieved in this one particular ad that you're analyzing. So once you have talked about the examples directly from that ad, you can go into further discussing how exactly they're going to affect the audience emotionally. What do they make the ads, or excuse me, the audience feel? You know, use those kinds of emotional terms, sad, happy, excited, concerned, anything like that that you think is affected by any of the visuals that are included in the particular ad that you're analyzing. And then this next paragraph doesn't achieve analysis nearly as effectively as the previous paragraph. You're mainly comparing Sarto's point of view with what BP has to say in response, and at the end you kind of come to the conclusion that BP has fulfilled their commitment. This is kind of similar to what we did in one of the discussions a couple weeks ago, but it's not exactly the goal of this assignment. So this would be a good place to talk about possibly the ethical appeals in the ad. Use that term ethos to talk about the credibility of the writer. Does BP seem like a credible publisher in this case to you, and why? And then you can use Sarto's kind of condemnation of BP to back up or support that analysis of credibility. And then along with that, I was a little bit confused as to why you kind of took what BP had to say and ran with it. So if Sarto is a outside perspective, and she says that to this day dolphins are still dying. There's more questions than answers. BP's not doing its job. Why do you believe the vice president of BP when he says that there are actually good signs? There's nothing to suggest other than it is resilient. BP does have to pay for it. I mean, I think Sardo would argue that they haven't really repaid their debt. And I'm a little bit curious why you find the vice president of BP's explanation of that to be credible. I think he's probably extremely biased, obviously wants to help out BP, and the fact that he just says these things doesn't necessarily convince me. Plus, this really isn't an argument back and forth between these two people. I'm more looking for clues in the ad as to why BP as a publisher or a writer might be credible. So what in the ad made you feel like they were trustworthy? Because obviously you seem to believe them when they say they've fulfilled their commitment, even though Sardo says they haven't. So if you're going to bring in this source to back up your analysis, I think maybe be a little bit more skeptical of BP, kind of along the lines of what Sardo is saying. Or if you want to argue that BP is in fact credible, maybe find a different outside resource that would back up their credibility a little bit, because in my opinion, just because the vice president said so doesn't necessarily make it so. That's not a person that I'm going to believe necessarily that they've done their job, but if you can go out and find an outside source who's not affiliated with BP or who's not got a financial stake in saying that, who does agree that BP's doing their job, well then that would enhance their credibility quite a bit more. Okay, and here's your conclusion. You do say that the ad is successful. You could talk maybe a little bit more directly about its persuasive purpose here. It's successfully convincing, or it was successful in persuading its viewers. And again, focus on that one particular ad, not every single ad. But what you're saying in the rest of the paragraph doesn't exactly match up with what you've developed in the body of the essay. So this point here does kind of touch on the audience emotions, which does relate to your very first body paragraph. However, this is more explanation of that point rather than summarizing that point. Excuse me. So some of the ideas here maybe would be better up in that paragraph where you're talking about emotional effects, and instead here just restate the point briefly. The ad effectively appeals to the audience's emotions, or the ad effectively appeals to the audience pathologically, or something like that. And then this point here, the fact that the ads do not mention the pending issues that still linger from the spill, and just assure viewers that BP's doing everything. This seems like an angle of vision thing, because remember, when you're looking at angle of vision, it's always what details are selected for and which are omitted, what things get emphasized, what things get de-emphasized. And the fact that they're completely leaving out the lingering effects of the spill reveals to me that they have an angle of vision that's biased toward making themselves look good. And so this is definitely a start in your thinking toward that analysis, but nowhere do you say angle of vision, nowhere do you say ethos or ethics or credibility. So again, until you can tie these ideas to the actual vocabulary of the unit, the language of rhetorical appeals like logos, pathos, and ethos, I'm not going to be convinced that your analysis is as in-depth as it needs to be. And so in general, you are recapping here. Again, you have a good evaluation of the ad, and you do talk about the audience emotions, and you do kind of touch on credibility, or at least I think you're alluding to your point about credibility, although again, you don't say the word credibility or ethics here. Those seem to be your two main points, and I would just tighten those up a little bit in the body of the essay and here, and bring in that analysis vocabulary a little bit more. But in addition to that, you could really beef up your analysis by adding a third point about the logic of the ad. Where do you think the ad is being logical? Do you think it's structured in a way that makes sense to the viewers? Do you think they have strong, reliable information to back up their points to kind of form that foundation of evidence that is necessary for a persuasive argument? Or anything to do with logic in the ad would add a third point that you could make to beef up your analysis, so that you don't just have an emotion point and a credibility point, but that you're touching on all three types of rhetorical appeals: pathos, ethos, and logos. And then again, you'll just want to recap those points very directly here using that kind of analysis language. Your works cited looks good. You don't need to have these extra spaces at the top, and you can move this right up to the top of the page. Every single one of these citations needs a hanging indent, so make sure that you do that. And I also did not see your blog link here, so I don't know yet if you're doing the header, title, background labels, and links correctly. But if you have any questions about that, please let me know. And in general, if you have any questions about my feedback here, let me know. I'll also send you the copy with my comments on it here, so you don't just have to go from the video. I'm very sorry that you didn't get feedback from anyone in the workshop, but hopefully this has been helpful. So yeah, again, just let me know if you need anything else. Thank you.